When people hear about a game being a gacha, they immediately think about it as a money-grabbing scheme to drain your wallet and turn their eyes away from it. This is especially the case for Azur Lane because not only it is a gacha game, it is very weeby. Azur Lane pretty much sums up a weeb's wet dream of almost naked 2D women, and it is totally embarrassing for people to see you playing this with how most of the characters in the game look like an ad for something adult only. But we're not here to talk about all the embarrassing things that this game can bring you when you play it in public. Instead, we're here to talk about why Azure Lane is one of the prime examples of why not all gacha games exist just to make your wallet dry. At least not deliberately and forcefully. A little bit of context for those of you that aren't enlightened, Azure Lane is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up developed by Shanghai Manjuu and Xiamen Yongshi, and was released back in 2017. Players control a fleet of anthropomorphic ships and battle their way through stages of the campaign that narrates the events of World War II in anime style. And just from that alone, you may think that it's just a Kanko clone, a game developed by Kadokawa Games back in 2013, which features anthropomorphic versions of World War II ships as well. While clearly Azure Lane was inspired by Kanko and is an attempt to follow its footsteps to popularity, both games are completely different from each other. Let's check out Azure Lane's gameplay. In Azure Lane, you control a fleet of 6 ships that consists of 3 Vanguard ships and 3 main fleet ships. Players mainly control the Vanguard ships, weaving through enemy bullets and projectiles, while the ship themselves automatically attack enemies in their range. Players can then make the Vanguard ships fire torpedoes manually or ask for artillery support and airstrike from the main fleet. Torpedoes and the main fleet attacks can be considered as the fleet's active skills, for the lack of a better term. Vanguard ships are mainly composed of destroyer ships, light cruisers, and heavy cruisers, while the main fleet contains battleships, battle cruisers, monitors, aircraft carriers, light carriers, and support ships, which heal all or certain ships on the fleet. The artillery support is the battleship's main gun, and the number of times players can store a charge of this skill depends on how many battleships, battlecruisers, or monitors the fleet has. Players need to tap and hold the main gun button on the screen and the targeting reticule will appear. The movement of the reticule is equal to the movement of the Vanguard fleet, and how far the reticule can target depends on the equipment of the battleship. The airstrike, as the name suggests, launches a squadron of planes to drop bombs onto the enemies. The number of times the player can store a charge of this skill depends not only on how many aircraft carriers or light aircraft carriers are in the fleet, but as well as how many bombers are and can be equipped on them. Calling in an airstrike clears the screen of enemy bullets as well, as it acts like a bomb on other shooter games. Torpedoes are activated from the Vanguard fleet, and as the name suggests, it launches varying numbers of torpedoes from the Vanguard fleet, the number depending on the equipment of the ship. The least amount of torpedoes is 3, while some equipment offers up to 8 torpedoes. It also depends on what type of ships the Vanguard fleet is composed of to determine how much the players can store torpedo charges. As seen on the footage, I currently have 5 charges of torpedoes, which means that's the maximum charges of torpedoes that I can store if I don't use them. After using each skill, they will go into cooldown. The cooldown of the skill depends on the fire rate of the main guns, the launch speed of aircrafts, and the rearming of torpedoes. But as mentioned earlier, players can store a certain number of charges of the skills. These charges determine how much a player can use the skills with every second without cooldown. For example, in this footage, I have 2 charges of my main artillery. If I fire off one charge, you will notice that it will be unavailable for just a few seconds before I can fire it again. If I fire the second charge, the charge number will become 0, and you can see an outline of the outer circle of the skill signifying the cooldown of the skill. Take note that the skill will only start the cooldown timer after exhausting all skill charge. Entering a mission node will cost the player's oil, which is Azur Lane's term for stamina. Each ship on the fleet then contributes to the total amount of oil that will be spent when battling enemy fleets inside the node. Before beginning, players can choose up to 2 fleets to attack with, which will then be placed on random tiles. Enemy fleets will then be placed strategically on the other tiles as well. When a friendly fleet touches the same tile as an enemy fleet, they will need to battle and destroy the enemy flagship. To end the mission node, players need to find the boss fleet, indicated with a smiling devil face, and defeat the flagship. Traveling through tiles will increase the danger level, where if the meter reaches danger, the traveling fleet might get ambushed or get aerated. Each friendly fleet only has 5 ammo, which means they can only battle 5 fleets with their full power. Once a fleet depletes their ammo count, their firepower will be reduced to half. Some maps have tiles that can replenish a fleet's ammo count, indicated by a question mark, but be careful though, as these tiles can sometimes only contain gold or any other materials, so think first before risking going to the tile. Azur Lane offers an automatic mode where an AI will control the fleet to battle another fleet. That includes activation of artillery support, air support, and torpedoes automatically. Players still need to manually traverse the tiles, however. This automatic mode is what happens on PvP. When players engage in PvP, they only need to choose an opponent and watch both fleets battle each other. Performing PvP rewards player with merit points, which they can exchange at the merit shop for various materials and other ships exclusive to PvP as well. Now, those aforementioned skills are the active skills of a fleet. But what shines mostly on Azur Lane are the passive skills of the ships, which can affect the aforementioned skills in a very huge way. There's a huge number of passive skills available in the game right now, all belonging to different ships, albeit some of them have similarities with each other. The least amount of skill a ship can have is 1, while the maximum number is 4. All Vanguard ships have an additional skill regardless of how many skills they have, called an all-out assault, which allows them to launch a barrage of bullets every few shots of their main gun. The bullet pattern of this barrage varies on what class the ship is. All passive skills aside from all-out assault can be upgraded using skill books and a little amount of gold acquired through various activities in the game. They can be collected through commissions, which is an offline activity where players can assign ships to get useful materials even when not playing the game, daily challenges, login rewards, among other examples. Players can then use these books in the tactical class of the academy, where players can upgrade the skill of a ship. Players can only upgrade 1 skill per ship, but can simultaneously upgrade skills of up to 3 different ships. Skill books come into 3 tiers, namely Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And each tier gives different amounts of progress to the skill, and an appropriate type of skill book will give a bonus progress point. To strengthen the fleet's active skills, players need to upgrade the ship's equipment using equipment blueprints and gold, which can be acquired through various activities in the game as well. Similar to skill books, equipment blueprints come with 3 tiers, and an equipment requires specific tiers for specific levels, as well as increasing amount of gold. All equipment in the game can be enhanced 10 times. Now onwards to the most important point of this video, the Gacha System. As mentioned earlier, Azur Lane, as with most mobile games these days, is a gacha game. But unlike most gacha games and unlike Grand Chase, which I have talked about before in a previous video, Azur Lane does not use premium currency to pull gacha. Instead, Azur Lane uses Wisdom Cube. And because of this, Azur Lane doesn't have the usual mechanic of a bonus character from a ×10 pool. Wisdom Cubes are acquired through daily and weekly quests repeatedly and once when progressing through the campaign. Commissions sometimes offer Wisdom Cubes as well. When going to the gacha page of the game called Build in the home page, players will immediately notice 3 tabs under the banner: Light, Heavy, and Special. These are the categories of ships from which the players can pull from. When an event is active, there will be a 4th tab called Event, where players can get limited time ships among the permanent ships already in the game. The Event tab will be based on one of the 3 categories of the normal gacha. Each category has varying Wisdom Cube and gold cost. Light costs 600 gold and 1 cube, while Heavy and Special cost 1,500 gold and 2 cubes. The Event tab, as mentioned earlier, varies between the Light cost and the Heavy and Special cost, depending on the event. On the left side of the build page, players will notice 3 more sections. Just below the build section is the under construction section, where the game will automatically bring the players to after confirming build on the build page. This is where players can monitor how much time is left on the construction of the ships. Each ship has varying timers, but players have figured out the specific ships and ship class have specific timers. I'll put a link on the description for the list of timers. Players can immediately finish the construction by spending quick finisher drills, which will allow players to immediately get the ship without waiting for the timer to end. Just below the under construction section is the exchange section. It is a shop where players can exchange Medal of Honors which are acquired from retiring rare or higher rarity ships. Retiring ships can be done just below the exchange section. So how exactly is it easy to earn wisdom cubes in this game? Players may ask. Well, it is quite fairly simple. Just logging in into the game can net the players some wisdom cubes for the login rewards. Then players just need to complete the 3 daily quests. First is to achieve victory from a campaign or event mission node. Second is to complete a battle with A rating once, meaning that the player needs to achieve at least 2 of the 3 objectives present when fighting another player. These 3 objectives are as follows: defeating the flagship of the fleet, achieving victory within a time limit, which is usually 120 seconds but may differ in special event nodes, and no friendly casualties. Failing one of these will result in an A rank, while completing every objective will result in S. Lastly, players need to achieve victory 3 times regardless of the battle rating. Doing all 3 of these daily quests will reward the player with 3 cubes per day as well as golden oil. Building a ship also rewards the player with 1 cube and a small amount of golden oil, so they actually have 1 free build every day given that they're pulling from the light category. Of course, wisdom cubes can be bought by premium currency as well, called gems, which are bought by real-life money. The developers sometimes give free gems, and progressing through the campaign also rewards players with gems. However, with how easy it is to earn wisdom cubes just by regularly playing the game, it is highly discouraged for players, especially new ones, to spend gems to buy wisdom cubes. Limited time ships return to the pool as well, and events get reruns, so event exclusive ships can be acquired later on. In conclusion, Azur Lane is a pretty fun game to play if you don't mind the weebiness of it. The gameplay is simple enough, and the gacha system isn't unfair and is not designed to make your wallet dry. What is designed to do so, however, are the cosmetics. Azur Lane has tons of skins for the ships, and they are so lewd you can boot the game up and play with one hand. The skins can be an alternative for adult websites with how lewd they are. That is where the developers get their money, but they're not game-changing. Skins don't offer any stat increase and is purely just cosmetic. Another thing that requires money in this game is the engagement ring needed to marry any ship of your choice. Marrying a ship does give a small stat boost, but it's mostly just for min-maxing a fleet. It doesn't affect gameplay that much with how small the boost is. If you want to know more about strategies, split builds, and proper equipment for each ship, there are a lot of resources on the internet that will give you detailed explanation for them. I will be linking some on the description, so go check them out. Now on to the downside. The gameplay can be a bit repetitive and slow as you progress through the game. The difficulty spike for every new campaign chapter is so high as well, which means you need to grind for equipment and develop your ships as soon as you hit a block while progressing through the story. PvP is one of the best ways to earn XP for the ships, but you are limited to 10 battles per day. The next best thing are commissions, but if you want to level your ships in your fleet, you need to remove them first from the fleet in order for you to put them into commissions. You won't be able to use them for a long period of time, since the commission that gives out the highest XP runs for at least 6 hours longer for higher XP. The game also pushes out events so quickly. And since the game is a gacha game, you can expect that there are multiple ships that can only be acquired through these events. With how easy it is to earn wisdom cubes, most players will have an adequate amount of stock of them for every event, but if you are unlucky and you manage to spend most of your wisdom cubes for the event, it will take quite some time to replenish it. And since the game pushes out events just a week or so after one event finishes, it is almost impossible to replenish lost wisdom cubes for the next event. And you're consistently playing the game non-stop because while most ships can be acquired through the gacha system, there are also ships that can be acquired through mission rewards and specific event nodes, and ships bought from the shop with event tokens. Event tokens are materials that you can acquire by finishing an event node and doing daily event quests, which makes the game even more grindy when an event is active. The positive side about this, however, is that the events do get a rerun, meaning the events will one day come back again with the same ships, same rewards, and same mechanics. So if you're looking for a mobile game to play, or you just want to try out some gacha games to see what the deal is, consider trying Azur Lane.